Hi Chinmoy. So we have been thinking of doing this talk series. Finally, we are doing it. So I would like to know about your experiences of building Nagent for last 1 year, and it has come at a good time that we have just gone live last week. So I would like to get your understanding on firstly a broader landscape of the tech ecosystem, especially the Agentic AI space that we are operating in. About your journey over the past year, where you felt challenges, how you overcome that, and the things where went well, things where you felt could have been better, and then some specific technical challenges that you have faced along the way. And objective of the conversation is that we bring some nuanced technical things, which is like a good learning for all of us, for others who will watch the video or with whom we'll be sharing these clips. So let me start with how you got into Nagent AI, right? So you have worked extensively in the domain of cybersecurity prior to joining Nagent or setting up Nagent, as you are one of the co-founders. So what made you take that switch to building an agentic AI platform for say workflow transformation rather than building an agentic AI solution in the cybersecurity space itself? So what was that reasoning for that switch?
First of all, thanks Anmol. Yeah, it's good to have this chat. Definitely, I mean, it's been a 1 year journey so far, and of course, like it intrigues me a lot, and I think it's a good platform that where I can bring in my thoughts and tell you how we actually went about building Nagent, right? So yeah, a little bit about my past. Like as you mentioned, my earlier company was Palo Alto Networks, where I was working with cloud security teams, right? So one thing is that I have always believed that I'm a person who builds products, right? So I have never been a domain specific guy as such. Like I worked with Palo Alto Networks, and then if you go back with HP, Dell, where I was working with storage, enterprise storage. Before that, also different domains, telecom. So I've always believed that it's about building things, whether it's in any domain. Of course, when you go and work with these companies with different domains and different skill set people come with, right, you learn a lot, right? So, and it gives you a holistic picture. If you are confined to one particular domain, then probably you are just, your thought process is pretty much defined to that one box. But if you go out and explore yourself, that's where the true magic lies, because you think differently, right? So when Pratap called me, like I know Pratap for a few years, right? But we haven't been in touch. So one fine evening he called me. That was in late 2024. That time these things like all the talks that's going on about AI, that time wasn't so much prevalent, right?
This is early 2020.
No, it's late 2024, around November. So so he just mentioned that about all these LLM models. I knew a little bit of things, but and we met. I said, okay, let's meet. And meanwhile, at that point in time, there were some changes going on in Palo Alto Networks as well, where my leadership was moving to a different company, and all those things were happening. So it actually gave me a thought that why not try out something new, right? At that point in time, of course, the way things were folding up, ChatGPT had come, and some of these new models were coming up. We could foresee that things are going to change drastically. So I thought, yeah, let's do and let's go and build this platform, right? So at that point in time, we didn't know what to build actually. Something crossed our minds, and I thought, let's give it a try, right? And if we don't do it now, then you'll never be able to do it, because last 1 year, I'm sure you know how fast things are changing, and I've never seen this kind of a change in my life. 20 years in the corporate career. So that actually intrigued me, and I said, okay, Pratap, let's build this, right? So, and knowing Pratap, I knew that he had this entrepreneurial mindset from the very beginning. I had seen him working with his previous startups. So that actually helped me to gain that strength and courage to actually come and start something new. So that's how Nagent started.
What I get a sense is that you were anticipating that the changes will be very steep. So you wanted to play a broader role, that
Yeah.
you didn't want to restrict yourself to a domain, as well as there was no clarity which models will work well, which models won't work well.
Yeah.
So the idea that you build a very broad platform that brings in the best capabilities of all AI tools or all AI models, and then see how the landscape evolves.
Yeah, that came little bit later. As I said, when we started, the idea was to talk to people, understand things, how the agentic world is evolving. Like even at that point in time, also if you see, it was more about generative AI. 90% of people were still talking about generative AI, but agentic AI had just kicked in, and what needs to be built, how it needs to be built, all those things were like how things are going to evolve, right? So one more aspect I would like to bring in is like when it comes to building products, software engineering, right? Even after all these things, right? The core ingredients remain the same. You cannot vibe code a platform. You can do it for fun. Even now, if you see, like there's a lot of talks about vibe coding products, but in actual production environments, things doesn't work that way. So the core ingredients of a platform remains the same. So as we started discussing more with Pratap, and then he had few ideas, I had few ideas, but definitely there was a consensus in terms of what we wanted to build, right? So slowly we started with building few agents, trying it out, and I think within 3 months we had like a alpha or beta, whatever you call it, right? So we were able to launch an MVP, I would say, to test the things, and the excitement on the ground was right. So that's where we started building this entire platform. We saw the value that it brings in, and so far we have come a long way. I think still, I would say we have just built probably 10% of what we want to build. But yeah, let's see how this goes from here.
So the different aspects that you mentioned, that what are the different foundational elements or core ingredients that distinguish a vibe coding or a MVP type prototype type of system versus a production grade system. We'll come to that in later part of the conversation. So okay, you made the call, you along with Pratap and other co-founders, that you want to take a big bet on this landscape. You want to build an agentic AI system which could build agentic AI solutions for any sector. So now the very first challenge that you would have encountered, a challenge or a big strategic decision, that if you are building an agentic AI platform, what type of orchestration framework would you take? Would you take something off the shelf such as LangGraph, LangChain, or you build something from scratch? You took the route of building something from scratch. So at Nagent AI, we have our own proprietary orchestration framework. So from the very basic, I want to understand what was your thought reasoning, that why you wanted to go for a proprietary framework, not pick something from off the shelf. What were the architectural considerations, and so what was the thought process behind making that choice?
Good question, Anmol. So one thing, like when you are building for the long term, right? You have to have obviously, like you cannot build everything, right? But what you can control. So basically, control is a key word here, right? So we wanted full control about what we are building, right? So as you mentioned, like there were some frameworks like LangChain, AI, which were out of the box, but we thought, so the approach was very different. The way we wanted to tackle this is like, we saw that for any customer or for any entrepreneur, so it's basically about solving problems, right? So there is an objective that has to be achieved, and there is an outcome that has to be delivered. So that's the whole agentic world, right? If you see broadly these two things, it's about the objective and the outcomes. Now, how you want to build and how you want to. So let me take an analogy here, right? It's about reaching the destination. How you want to reach to the destination. There are different routes. If you go to Google also, it shows you different routes, right? So you have to plan accordingly. So we thought whenever a task has to be achieved, it has to be obviously be broken down. And the analogy I can give you is like when we have features to be built, we break it down to stories. So similarly, our approach was that you have to break down an objective into different stages, right? And the current problem with a lot of frameworks which still exists is like there is indeterministic output. You don't know when you are building, let's say, a real world agent with 50 nodes and things break. You don't know what to fix, where to fix, how long it's gonna take. So we wanted to break it down to subtasks basically. Okay. So we call it like a stage, and we wanted that every stage you'll be having an deterministic output, right? So what that also means is that we can play around with different models. One, if let's say I am building an objective with 10 stages, so I can use 20 different models, which currently the other frameworks may not give you, right? So, and since the control is at every minute subtask, the auditing, the reliability, all those things comes into the picture. So if something breaks somewhere, you exactly know what needs to be fixed where. Maybe your prompt is not correct in stage 3. If it's, let's say, 5-stage agent, you don't have to change everything, right? And as I said, the auditing, the tracing, the observability, all these are core ingredients of any software. So if you are not able to pinpoint exactly, right, it becomes massive when it goes to production. You will not be able to figure out all the challenges people are facing, how they want to fix it. So we wanted this thing to break it down so that we have autonomous small subtasks, or you can even call it micro agents, different terminologies, right? But at the end of the day, the thought process was to have full control, something which is easily debugged, which can be audited, which can be traced. So all these things, keeping all these things in mind, we thought we will have our own orchestration engine, the way we want to build the agents, right? So that's how we started, and I think so far it has scaled well. Of course, even we have some certain limitations. We're trying to figure those out, but that is the whole thought process that we had actually when we were designing this orchestration process. So it gave us full control of what we wanted to build. That was the core thing, the control basically, and how we want to customize it, right, for every customer, for every agent.
Right. So basically, few things. Firstly, you talked about control. So that thing that we talk about, you would have heard that in bigger conferences, the top leaders from the country, the bureaucrats, the tech leaders, the concept of AI sovereignty. So if you pick something which is proprietary from scratch, gives you, that builds a potential for you to build something big from India. I can tell from my experience, so whatever conferences that I've attended, largely with CEO Pratap, so whoever top leaders or business leaders, whoever has heard our this foundational framework, even if they are not aware of what are the specific good pointers or features that our framework brings in, they have been very appreciative of our courage, that you took a very courageous call, especially for a company. So as a situation is that we are not a very heavily funded company. So for a company which has a lot of resource constraint, to take that bold call of going with your own proprietary framework, everyone has called that out as a very impressive move. So yeah, one is that.
So Anmol, if I may, I think it brings me into one more analogy, right, which is important to consider here since we are talking about this, right? So another important aspect when Pratap and me were talking about is about subject matter experts being able to build agents, right? So again, I'll just bring you to this entire process of breaking down the objective into different stages. So the thought process was when you are building a agent which is like an enterprise agent, right? So different functions in the future can come together. So if I'm a marketing guy or you are a finance guy, there can be an agent which runs across these functions as well.
Yeah.
But a marketing guy won't know how to build a particular piece in the finance thing, or the finance guy may not know what needs to build on the marketing side.
Right.
So these two people can actually, build these different stages or sub agents, and then we can bring them together and build this entire thing. It was like, again, bringing it to like scoping it and breaking it down into things. So that was another aspect we consider when we were, architecting this orchestration process. So in the future, the way we see things is collaboration, right? Collaboration has to be massive in this industry. right? Where people from different sectors, people from different functions, they can come together and they can collaborate and build something out of it. So that was one of the other aspects that we considered.
So yeah, you brought both the points very well. So one was the strategic part, that you wanted to have control and flexibility on how this landscape or these framework could evolve in future. Maybe one existing framework was good today, it may not be good tomorrow. So you wanted to have that control. And secondly was the business and technical sense, that as our platform or as our company's philosophy is to empower the domain experts who may not be from tech. So you wanted to have an architectural framework wherein debugging is easier. You could separate out which stage gave the optimal output, or if prompting was wrong, if model could be switched, so that debugging is easier and different stakeholders from different departments could collaborate easy rather than the whole output getting mixed.
Correct.
So that was very good to know. So further a step follow-up question on the same part. So you took this call both for strategic reason, for this business and tactical reason. So what are the one or two initial steps that you did? So one is that you take that big call, okay, I want to build something different and this is my philosophy. But then it comes to hardcore technical work. So what are the challenges go? Do you have to iterate with lot of table designs? So when you were, look, I'm talking about the very first or second week when you took that call, I want to build a framework from scratch. So where did the iterations, all those energy went?
Okay, so yeah, so when we started the first time, right? So I'll just tell you that there were just 4 or 5 DB tables that we had. And currently, if I remember the last deployment we did, it's about already 60 or 65 DB tables.
Over a period of 1 year.
Over a period of 1 year. So that's how software systems evolve, right? But again, Anmol, like, because we had our own orchestration, we wanted to build this. So that gave us a lot of flexibility in terms of how we want to define our flow, right? So and that's how, like, we kept on adding, right? So so far it's been like we haven't faced major challenges in terms of, you know, keep adding new things. Of course, there will be some technical challenges here, but that's part of the process of software. Any software you build, those things come into the picture. But because we took that decision early on, we were able to, you know, extend the framework and keep building on top of it as and when new use cases came in. So that gave us the flexibility to, you know, build this. And I see, I mean, as I said, 60, 65 tomorrow, probably we can scale to some 200 teams. I don't know. We can even migrate our database to something else if tomorrow we want to.
Right.
So yeah, that's how typically software systems are built, and over a period of time it becomes more and more complex. But initially, because we took this decision, we were able to bring the product out into the market quite quickly with whatever, like the way we designed it, the way we orchestrated it. And so far, I think people have seen value in it. So let's hope for the best.
Okay. So the first phase was the planning, ideation, and strategizing part, right? But as you yourself have worked in tech for more than 2 decades, you know, ideation and planning is just one thing. Everyone thinks they're Steve Jobs when they do planning, but the real challenge comes when it comes to implementation. And as I mentioned, we did not have that luxury of a very super funded or a very liberal team. We had a very lean and a resource constrained setup. So now you had to bring that vision into execution. I want to know what were your few aspects of your ways of working wherein you were able to ship products faster, launch different versions, some features, some alpha beta releases at a short interval. So maybe a couple of things you can talk about, that how you have embedded AI in your daily ways of working, to what extent, maybe for writing code or what the use cases, and maybe so because the landscape is changing so much, as I've been interacting with you, QA is always a challenge. You have to keep checking that if you're adopting something new, is it working, not working. So writing code, QA, how are these two aspects have been tackled in the company? Where have the challenges been faced? And how do you see AI or automation getting into this?
Great question. So again, like as you mentioned, we from the beginning we have been a very lean team, right? And we didn't have the luxury of spending too much.
Yeah.
So I built a team around like 4 or 5 engineers who are primarily, all of them are freshers. I would say some of them joined us as intern and
Yeah.
they have evolved over a period of time, right? So the good thing about these Gen Z guys, I would say, is that they are not afraid of taking risk, right? So during our times, it was quite difficult. Like if someone says that I want to work in a startup, all
And that was not cool.
Yeah, but now if you see, I proudly wear that in my sleeves that none of those guys have left us like in 1 year, right? All of them have evolved. The challenge is these guys have started in the AI era. So if you let us do things, experiment, push to production, and so that's where we chose one of the, I would not name it, one of the vector databases which was open source, free to use, right? Which obviously it was good. It definitely helped us to experiment with things, how our agents work with the different knowledge bases that we give. But as and when we started progressing towards more complicated use cases. I would say if you see our platform is like, as we say, we have 2 kinds of users. I would say 3 kinds of users. Something like on top we have Nagent, which is our platform. That's a in itself. And then you have your creators who are creating the agents and the seekers who are using those agents from the marketplace. So broadly we have these 3 things. So as and when things progressed, we felt the current vector database that we are using is not up to the mark in terms of how we want to segregate the different knowledge bases. So when, for example, we are creating a agent, so an agent, as I mentioned, can have 4 or 5 different layers of knowledge base that can be given to it. Yeah. Right? So it can be the creator's knowledge base, it can be the seeker's knowledge base, it can be the platform's knowledge base, and then you have the system knowledge base, the guardrails, right? So all these things will apply to any agent. So that is where we faced issues with the current, I would say, the previous vector database. So that's where we started thinking about migrating to some enterprise-ready vector database. Okay, right. So initially, I think
so. Basically, the challenges that you were facing was primarily the segregation of different types of knowledge bases with respect to agent level, creator level, seeker level, platform level. So we were facing issues that the outputs were not very consistent with respect to different sort of knowledge bases.
Yeah, and like where do you refer? Where does your agent actually pick up the data from?
Yeah.
Right? The segregation has to be there.
Right.
So for example, a creator is creating an agent. He has given his own knowledge base. Now that agent is being used by 5 different, let's say, companies or enterprises. They will have their own knowledge bases.
Right.
Now how does the agent know when you are writing the prompt that what needs to be picked up from where? The creator has, obviously when the creator is writing a prompt, he would mention his knowledge bases, but when the seeker is giving his knowledge bases, right, that prompt has to be dynamic enough now. So those are a few of the things, but there were a lot of other things in terms of maintainability, in terms of how you want to have your metadata, how you want to have your tags. Yeah. So that's where we thought of migrating it to a better thing, and our initial estimate was that we'd be able to do it within a month, but I think it took around more than 2 months, I would say. Yeah, those are the challenges that you face when you actually do these kind of things, right? But I think it was a good learning for every team member, I would say. And going forward also, now we feel confident that again, Anmol, like this brings me to the first question. All of this was possible because of the way we orchestrated things.
Right.
Because the control is with us. And then again, like we thought, Subrata suggested that since we want to make it more generic, let's keep the previous database. Generic means I would say, since so we have now these 2 vector databases, the old one and the new one.
Right.
Since the old one is already implemented. Why do we want to take it out? If some customer tomorrow says that my vector database is A, so we can easily switch back to A. If they
Okay.
because that code is still there. And if a customer says, I want to go to C, we can still add C as a new vector database.
Okay.
So that's how we are, thinking about the platform in terms of how we want to scale it. Right? So vector database is one thing. Similarly, when it comes to cloud, right, we are hosted on a cloud, public cloud. Tomorrow, if obviously we have enterprise customers who want to be on a different cloud, right? So our base has to be adaptive enough with any database, any cloud, any ecosystem we should be able to deploy. Right?
Okay. So, in terms of RAG, as you mentioned, it's one of the very important elements. Also, I have read this many times that if you want to really excel in agentic or AI, RAG is the core ingredient. Like, it's always a combination, but RAG is definitely very good. So you talked about, so when we evaluate any RAG pipeline or any RAG system, so we do it in two ways. One is the technical performance and the business performance. So technical performance, the scalability, the latency, all those things that you talked about.
The relevance.
And the relevance, relevance. So this is the technical performance side. Now, if I talk about business performance side, which is the issue of cost optimization. So currently, maybe we are not at that bigger scale where cost per token or the token consumption will pose a big challenge because the scale is low. But once we scale, so what are the elements that you have in mind or that is still going on in the planning stage that we optimize the cost well? Because as we are targeted towards enterprises, these cost leverage, cost arbitrage will play a big role on which agentic AI platform will work.
Cost is cost is an important aspect, but it's not everything, because if you are compromising with quality, that cost will hit you harder later. You may be burning $50 today, right, which you can afford to, but tomorrow, that's what, as I mentioned, right, when we started with a normal thing which was free, open source, easy to use for experimentation. We saved a lot of cost.
It also stemmed out from a lack of resources.
Correct. It saved a lot of cost, right? But at the same time, when you are scaling up, you cannot compromise with quality, right? Because if you do that, then the cost will hit you harder later. Today's $50 will become $5,000 tomorrow.
Right.
What do you do then? And the cost of as you mentioned, right? So we did this complete migration where we were able to do it in 2 to 3 months' time. What if this migration was needed another 5 years down the lane? Then probably you'd be looking at deploying 5-10 dedicated resources to do this migration. Yeah. So the cost will be much higher at that point in time, right? So cost is an important aspect, but that balance has to be there. Cost, good things comes with cost, with a price, right?
Yeah. That's right. So in that context also you mentioned that our chief architect, Mr. Subrata, when he joined, so he joined at a very good time because at that stage we were just scaling up, so that all those issues of latency, scalability, relevancy, we were just starting to face those issues. So I think the right time the switch was made, so that platform became a lot more stable now, and the base is good for us to scale and build further. Okay, so that is another aspect. So now if we go from to other architectural aspects of agentic AI, so RAG definitely we have talked about, which is one component that excites you the most. For some it could be RAGs, for some it could be triggers, some it could be memory, evals. What is the most, so if you would not have started an agentic AI company and if you would have continued in any corporate organization, which is that part where you would have loved to work?
Of course, I had a very deep background in terms of UI, UX, front-end things. Right? But what excites me most is how users use your application. You may think that you have built a beautiful thing and you have that pride feeling that you have built something, but when you see real users, how they are using it, right? That also brings in a lot of things in terms of as you said, with Agentic AI, whether they are able to get the outcomes they desire or not. If not, then what are the issues? So tracing every user session, trying to figure out what can be improved, how they can be improved, why the user dropouts matter, like in how we can reduce it, how the hallucinations can be reduced. All those things come into the picture. I think those areas, I think in the agentic world will play a very big role, and that excites me because I think we can talk about our karmic feedback loop that we are working on, which is the agentic memory. That excites me a lot because at the end of the day, the agents.
So basically, the evals and the AI explainability part is your interesting.
Yeah, and of course, how we can help the creators to build agents faster, better, cheaper. And as our platform is we already have a combination of 100 plus agents, right, which I think very few platforms gives you. How these combinations can be made to derive the best outcome for the user. So these things I think are very exciting. How you can reduce the hallucinations. Of course, with AI, everyone knows it's not 100%. It can never be 100%.
Yeah.
But how can we reduce it? So how can we make the agent learn from its past mistakes? So all those things are definitely things that excites me. And of course, solving real use cases for our customers. We are getting so many different kind of use cases, and it excites me to build all those things.
So similar to the first question, that why you chose a in-house proprietary framework for orchestration. So again, this is a classic build versus buy debate, right? So this debate would have come or will still come when it comes to building an eval system, right? We have LangFuse, and there are many other good tools for both for tracing, observability, and overall evaluation. So here, what is your thought process of whether going for an off-the-shelf product or building something from the scratch, like the karmic feedback loop that you're talking about? So few elements. So what I want to ask you is, how will different evaluation systems or AI explainability components differ from each other? Which one will do well, which will not do well?
I think, build versus buy. So that's what I think. We, again, as I said, you don't build everything, right? For example, we are using third-party system for logging. We are using third-party system for tracing the LLMs, all those things, right? So we are not building them. But the data is with us, right? And how we make sense of that data. So that's what we are building. So you don't build everything. There are things that can be used out of the box, and we are using it. But there are certain things that you need control, right? So that is where we have the data now, how we can use these tools, for example, the logging tools, the tracing and observability tools, to make sense of that data and feed that data back to our agents to make them learn, to make it better, to educate the creators, what can be wrong with the way they have built an agent. Right? So it's, again, as I said, you build certain things, you buy certain things. So we are also doing that. It's, any software company, if you see any software product that is being built, even with large enterprises, they don't build everything. Obviously, you'll be using a lot of SaaS tools. We are also using it. But that decision, the core should be at your control.
Yeah.
Right? That's our agent orchestration.
And we keep hearing these terms that most AI agent companies or agentic AI companies, they don't have a real moat or a real defensibility, right? We call them LLM wrappers, right? So one thing is that we have built a platform wherein we try to bring the best capabilities of different models. You talked about different ways by which you could reduce hallucination, ensure latency is good, relevancy is high through the rack pipeline. So basically one part is you optimize the capabilities of existing LLMs. That is one way you add capability beyond just being an LLM wrapper, right? But the second part that you mentioned, that though we are using external tools for logging, tracing, etc., but the data that we are collecting, this data could become your moat, because then you would know which nodes are working well, which are not working well. If you're working with an enterprise or creator for a long, you have that data that you could feed signal for its improvement. So this is not something which is there with the LLM providers. So I also agree with that view that if you build this, the feedback loop or the memory loop well.
It's important to discuss about this wrapper thing. So I've been in this industry for a decade now, or 2 decades in fact. Every software is a wrapper on something. Your software is a wrapper on Java, or your software is a wrapper on any Google Cloud. You can call it a wrapper. Now a new wrapper is there, that's the LLM. LLMs are your new wrappers. It's just one layer that has been added. You still have your front end, your back end, your database, your cloud deployment, and this is a new thing that has come into the picture, and I see this as a layer which is enhancing things, which is making things better. Right? So, I keep telling this, like every software ever built, whichever platform, whichever language you are writing on, it's always been a wrapper. Unless and until you are actually doing some, even the LLMs, do you call them a C++ wrapper? Because the core language probably would be a C library written by someone. Even the NVIDIA chips are there, they write it on C, whatever, right? So everything is a wrapper on something else. So this debate is intriguing for a lot. The true value lies in, as I said, providing real value to your customers. If the customers see the value, they will adopt it. If the customers don't see the value, they won't adopt it. It doesn't matter what wrapper it is, whether you are on on OpenAI or Gemini or Anthropic, outcome matters.
Like very good point that you mentioned, that even the tools of the past, they were wrappers on something else. Why I think initially the AI tools, why this concept of LLM wrapper became very prominent or all over social media, because few years back it was felt that there will be only one or two big models that will rule the all agentic AI systems of the world. It started with OpenAI, right? So it was felt that everything will be an OpenAI wrapper. That's why that concept came. Then we got some comfort that maybe OpenAI will not remain the only big LLMs, other good LLMs will also come. Now that concept is further decentralized. We see a big movement of pride of good LLMs coming from India. There have been some releases at the recent India AI Summit. So I think, so that initial fear or the point that was that only 2 or 3 wrappers will rule the world, that has now broadened. So now that fear or that myopia of any agentic AI tool being an LLM wrapper, that has gone. That's a very good point and very good insight. So I'll now just finish with last 2 segments. So let's talk about India AI Summit, right? We all have heard about some major announcements, lot of funding talks, MOU sign-ups, statements by top political tech leaders, right? So there have been a lot of announcements across different layers of the agentic AI tech stack, starting from infra has received huge attention, both India and globally. Application layer also has received a lot of attention, but as many experts have pointed out that orchestration layer is still something which has not received the attention as the other layers, tech stack layers for agentic AI. So I want to know your perspective in this. How will this orchestration tech stack layer will evolve in say 2026? Maybe early 2026 orchestration layer was not something big. Next year something of this summit, maybe orchestration layer theme will rule. Different platforms all will claim the same thing. In many platforms will claim that they are no code agent builder. They bring the best capabilities of LLM. They are very intuitive. How would enterprise, so suppose if you would have been in enterprise, how would you evaluate different agentic AI platforms? So say we as Nagent, if we are going into the market, what are the parameters would you project that we are better than, so that enterprise feel confident in us? So basically, how will the platform evaluations be done from a buyer perspective?
Yeah, nice question. So again, as I mentioned, so touching base upon our orchestration layer, right, which gives us a lot of control in terms of how we break down the task. So each task has a certain objective to be achieved, right? It has to do something and it has to give you an output. So that is where the magic lies, right? So if you are able to break it down and pinpoint things where exactly things can break, or what particularly, a small thing that you can probably tweak in a particular objective stage or a particular micro agent, as you say, that can actually, completely, it can completely give you a different output. I mean, a better output. So those tweakings, those things, where the user has the control, as I mentioned, like, tomorrow when people are collaborating and they are making like big agents, a small thing can break across the chain. It's like a, what do you call, domino effect, right? So with our orchestration, that domino effect can be minimized.
Okay.
Right? So it's, again, like if there's a small thing to be done at a particular stage piece, then you can just do it and test it out before actually plugging in things and make sure that the entire thing is working. So that is one of the things. So
basically, it overcomes the issue of compounding of hallucination.
Compounding of hallucinations. That's why I said the dominoes effect, right? And for enterprises, as I mentioned, enterprises would always look for security. They will look for governance. They will look for better outcomes, faster, cheaper, better. And for them, the data is the moat, right? So that is where we'll have to have all these guardrails, the governance layers, at the end of the day, every enterprise looks for better outputs, or I would say they look for increasing productivity or reducing cost. There are just two things. If you are able to do any of them, you will be adopted. So that's the only thing. Like, if you are able to increase the productivity, show them with this, you can increase your productivity by 50%, this agent can do the task for you, they will adopt it. Or if you can say, if you see our the marketing agents we have, the content creation agents, you can easily say that this will bring down your cost by 90%. Right. So that's the only way for adoption. Right?
Basically, the outcomes, the way the agents are delivering, that will decide which platform will excel, which platform will lag.
So that's why, like, if you see there are a lot of AI startups, again, I don't want to demean anyone, there is a lot of hype, a lot of noise. Still, if you see people talking around, they say everything works well in demos, everything works when you are not actually in the production environment. But once you go there, things start failing, right? So slowly things are improving, but I think it will be till there is adoption, but the adoption is still very slow, right? So, and that adoption will only increase if you are able to give any of these two things to the customers.
Right.
Reduction in cost or increase in productivity.
That's a good point. So, okay, my last question before we wrap up the discussion. So, this is more on the business front. So, we keep hearing lot from also from some tech leaders, but more from general tech and business community, that barriers to building tech solutions have gone down. Courtesy so many AI tools are there. Basically, there are so many frameworks available which can help you build, right? So barriers to building has definitely gone down. So then what is the real differentiator? Apart from, say, the sales and distribution, the marketing which the business side will take, is UI UX a big differentiator? So look, firstly I want to ask you, has that, let me rephrase it, right? We keep saying that product building has become very easy, right? But when you go in your daily stand-ups, you must be realizing that some things you call theoretically it's very easy to build, but challenges keep coming, the bugs keep coming, and it's very difficult to isolate the edge cases. So how easy or how tough still is product building, and what will be the real differentiator? Will it still be the product will still be the king, UI UX, or the real difference will be the distribution channel?
See, product, you rightly mentioned, right? So it's very easy to build products now. It's very easy to build products for demos. Again, it's the same thing. Of course, if that was the case, then probably you would see all these big companies being replaced overnight. That's not happening. I mean, there are talks, there is a lot of apprehension, I would say, but the moat of these companies is not just the product, but the deep knowledge and the deep integration they have. Understanding the customers environment, understanding the customer's pain points. So those things will still remain. Of course, with these things, what we can definitely do is build products faster, but at the same time, there will be more and more issues that needs to be solved. Right? Because we are shipping 10x faster now. If we are shipping 10x faster, there would be issues, and those have to be tackled. Because as I mentioned earlier also, your LLM model can give you the code. Your LLM model doesn't understand your customer. Your LLM model doesn't understand their environment, their integration. So those things still remains to be solved, and I think a lot of companies are solving it now. I think that's how the things are evolving.
So the takeaway that I can get from you is the shipping rate has definitely improved. You do not have that much luxury of waiting for weeks, months to ship something or ship a new feature. So that time has gone down. But the real sustained impact will happen only if that whole ecosystem is done well. You have a good product, but more importantly, the integrations are well in place. You have built the business logic well. You have handled for the edge cases, so that you just don't remain impressive in demos, but you remain a sustained application which can be used again and again by enterprise or whatever segment that you are targeting. So yeah, with this we can wrap up. It was good to have this start. Have more of these sessions, maybe smaller sessions targeted to specific issues, specific pointers in future.
Thanks Anmol, I think it was a great conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
सब चीजों का जैसे आपने बोलते हैं ना कि एक स्टार्ट तो हर चीज का परफेक्शन का वेट करेंगे तो कुछ आपने अच्छे मतलब पॉइंट्स बताए जो नॉर्मल कंटेंट डिस्कशन वगैरह के लिए